Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, maybe even good night, in which case I would say such a dedication. And well, whatever place and time zone you are, welcome to this new session of our Data Masters Rendezvous live series. I am Ron Toledo, CTO of Capgemini's Global Insights and Data Business, and I will be your host today, joining you from The Hague, the Netherlands, where it is, I can assure you, definitely autumn. And it is a special session indeed, as we will be discussing the findings and insights of our recently published Data-Powered Enterprises report. Now, this may be because I've been contributing to the report myself a little bit, so forgive me, but I feel if you're into data, analytics, and AI, and of course you are, and you only had time to read one publication this year, because obviously you would be busy, well, this should be the one. I hope you'll agree with me, at least a bit after this session. But of course, before we dive into all of these data goodies, we have some really great guests today to discuss this report and to introduce to you. They will share their insights and experiences being on their own journeys towards data mastery. First of all, we have Monica Leon Santamaria. She is the Global Data and AI Center of Enablement Lead at Bupa, which is a globally operating healthcare and health insurance enterprise, or maybe I should just call you CDO. Monica, she has a background as CDO and head of data analytics and AI, and she actually contributed to the report as well. So good to have you here in the show, Monica.
Thank you.
Hi there. Then we have Alberto Palomo. He is the Chief Strategy Officer at the Gaia X Association for Data and Cloud, AISBL. And the latter, AISBL, that's an acronym, I believe, for the Belgian notion of Association Internationale Sans But Lucratif, essentially an international non-profit organization. And he will tell much more about it in a second.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward, and very interesting. You were a chief data officer for the Spanish government before, and so there's lots of very interesting things to discuss. And come to think of it, hey, we actually have two people from Spain today in our discussion, which is not by design, but it's certainly a bonus, as I'm sure everybody will agree. And then to switch to something completely different, we go to north of Denver, Colorado, United States, where Jonathan Bruce just woke up, I guess. It might still even be dark over there. And he told me that it's definitely autumn there as well. He is the VP of Strategic Customers for Alexion, which is a company well known for its next generation data catalog technology. But maybe there's more to it than that. Also, he is my backup, by the way, in the unlikely event that we lose connection and we simply want to keep on talking. Well, then there's Jonathan. And if he falls away as well, it's mayhem and it's chaos.
Thank you
again. Good to have you there, and it's a safe feeling to have you as a backup, So again, welcome to all of you. Now, before we dive into the discussion, let's have a quick recap of some of the findings in the report. And again, if I would have only one picture to show, that is actually the case. I have only one picture. Well, this would be the one. You can see it over here, and I'm fascinated by it because I already found that I can use this very picture, just this one picture, and could talk literally hours for it, and I have done so already. I actually presented for something like an hour as well, just with this slide, but it's also a fabulous discussion tool. Because what does it say? Well, the key findings of the report are over here. First of all, the report is called Data-Powered Enterprises, right? And we define a data-powered enterprise as an organization that can create, process, and leverage data proactively to achieve its business objectives, increase operational excellence, improve customer experience, and drive innovation. So we did this research already 4 years ago as a first edition, so in 2020. And that was right before COVID hit the shelves, of course. COVID hit the world. And also when Gen AI kicked in a little bit later on, a few years later on. So now we are 4 years down the line. And the thing is, what we used in the Data-Powered Enterprises report also 4 years ago is then we found companies that consider themselves successful in leveraging data, consider themselves data-powered. We could call them data masters. They actually master being a data-powered enterprise in two different dimensions. There's a first dimension, which you could call the data foundations. And this is all about technologies, finding the right data sets, finding the right means to ingest the data, to collect it, to store it, to make it available, have the proper governance, have the proper processes, have the proper engineering foundations for it as well. So you could call that data foundations. And we had a whole survey And if you're interested, we're happy to share the questions that we asked more than 500 companies that we surveyed for this. And you get some idea of where you are there in terms of how mature are you in terms of foundations. But we found another dimension as well, and we call that dimension we call data behaviors. And data behaviors have much more to do with, let's say, well, the word says it all: mindset, culture, transformational capabilities, the way you actually put the data into action right at the business where it belongs, your ability to actually monetize data and make it a strategic integrated business objective. You could call these data behaviors. And we found that you need to be mature at both of these axes to be successful as a data-powered enterprise and to be seen as a data master. Now, when we did this research, and there comes the interesting thing, when we did this research in 2020, so 4 years ago, again, before COVID, before Gen AI, we found that more than 70% of all companies considered themselves so-called data laggards. So they realized that they were below par, both in terms of foundations and also in terms of their behavior capabilities. So you could roughly say that the sense of urgency in terms of picking up data and be powered by data was not necessarily there that much. And of course, we found some companies already considered themselves data enabled, as we call it. So they were strong in their foundations, but were lacking the actual mobilization at the data side, at the business side. And then there was also a small number of companies that we would call data aware. And that would be companies that do realize that data needs to be activated at the business level and make it a strategic asset and make it a cultural and let's say almost mindset asset, but might be lacking a little bit the data foundations. So all in all, you could say, well, almost 3/4 of the organizations in 2020 considered themselves data laggards. We're not very good at it, right? Now, 4 years later, look at what has changed. The number of data laggards has considerably decreased from 71% to 50%. What does it tell me? Well, I think both COVID and generative AI, nowadays such a premium boardroom topic. If nothing else, it is a premium boardroom topic, an elephant in the room that nobody can ignore any longer. And we find that both combined, of course, with COVID, we find that a lot more companies, compared to 4 years ago, see the need to become data masters and hence have started to move and hence would not call themselves anymore data laggards. So you see, there's a significant improvement there. Now, of course, we would conclude, okay, that means we have many more data masters by now, right? 4 years after. Well, have we got news for you? It's not the case. So actually, we still have 16, 17% of companies that see themselves and would be surveyed being a data master. And that means that the big transitions that we've seen, particularly are in the area of data foundations or data behaviors. Now, one area, data enabled, grown from 7 to 16%. And I'm sure many of you are involved in data strategy and data governance on a daily basis. And I'm sure you will recognize it. I found in my own experience in the past few years that a lot of companies tend to focus first on their foundations. And we've seen nothing different in the past few years. A lot of companies focus a lot on their tooling, on their platforms, on their cloud operations, on their processes, on finding the right data set, storing it, making it available, but not necessarily activating that much on the business side yet. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people recognize that. But there's something interesting as well. And that is on the upper left-hand side, there we see the data awareness very clearly have been rising a lot as well. And I find that particularly interesting because I believe it's particularly triggered by generative AI. And we will be discussing in a minute. One of the key findings in our report, in the new version of the report, is that Gen AI has very much triggered this need for companies to become data masters and make data much more a first-class product, a key asset for the organization. And with that, we see a lot of companies increasing their data awareness to the level that a lot of people in the business side think about Gen AI are bullish about data, but then forget that they need a lot of their foundations in order to do it successfully. And I think that's one of the key insights we gathered from our recent research. It's great news that we are much more aware of the need to become data masters and become data powered. Having said that, next to what we've already seen a lot in terms of, isolated data departments centrally, not necessarily that much loved, if you like, by the business side. But now we also see a very active, if you like, business side with a lot of awareness, but actually lacking, I would say, the enterprise scale and understanding what it takes in terms of quality and privacy, and let's say all the other things that are needed to act at enterprise scale, and I'm not seeing that yet. And that makes them nothing more than being data aware, and that is still something to improve over there as well. By the way, if you would still be working in a company or being at a company that's still considered themselves data laggards, I'm a bit of a consultant myself, and I've always felt, well, if that's the case, any direction is good. The only way is up, right? You could increase both your foundations and your behaviors. Now, so we've seen that, and that's my short few minutes in terms of what we found in the report. Let's quickly dive into some questions for our panel members today. I would like to start with you, Monica, but before that, just in a few seconds, tell us a bit more about Bupa for those people that don't know it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Ron, and thank you for your introduction and for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here and share my thoughts and also learn about the other participants in the event. Thank you very much.
Sure.
About myself. Okay, I've been working in Bupa for 4 years now, and all this time in the data domain. I mean, I'm really a data professional. All my professional career is in data, working before for big consultancy companies or system integrators. And now what I'm doing is doing in Bupa what I did before as a consultant. Okay, I'm doing it internally, right? Mm-hmm. I think I can cover the whole process of becoming a data master. Going in the journey to become a data master in my company. That this is something that Bupa is trying to achieve, because data is one of the main pillars in the Bupa strategy. You have the opportunity to have a look to Bupa strategy. Data is one of the main pillars because we are a very customer-focused company, and data is essential in order to meet our business strategy.
That makes a little bit, that's already, let's say, an entree into our question as well, right? So I have maybe the biggest question of them all. It's not exactly the meaning of life, but almost like that. So first of all, why are we here today? Why would you want to be a data-powered enterprise in the first place? The answer is not 42. We already know that. But maybe you have some ideas why you want to be data-powered in the first place.
It's a good question, right? And if you have a look to and you read not just your report and many other, or you come to forums as and events like this one, everybody talk about being a data power enterprise. We have to increase our data culture, but from my point of view, okay, this is a trend, and it sounds very interesting, nice, and challenge as well, right? But I think that is a matter of survival, right? Is for companies like Bupa, but I think that for many other companies in the world that they want to continue being leaders in the market, they want to evolve in these complex years. You have to be a data-driven companies, okay? If these companies need to want to be more efficient, if they want to retain more their customers, or they want to engage their customer more, or they have to comply with the regulations on even the three of these things, you need data. Okay, you need to digitize your processes, and you have to embed the data into your business process. And this is about data. Okay, so in summary, or in general, being a data powered company is a must for those companies that want to transform their business digitize all their processes, and being customer focused as my company is. Okay.
And there's definitely a customer focus there, right? Because you're focusing on healthcare, both in providing healthcare, but also health insurance, right? So I can imagine there's a special emphasis on the customer experience and the level of customer service first, right?
Yeah.
And other areas of let's say being data powered, like productivity and efficiency, maybe even monetizing data, are these things that resonate within Bupa as well?
Yeah, I mean, all these things, it's happened, you know, Bupa is a company where we operate across many different countries across the world. I could say that it's quite a federated company. So the maturity level of the data culture in these countries is quite different. Okay? They have different maturity levels, and so we are approaching to all these concepts. But it depends first, it depends on the business strategy. It depends on what the business in this company, in this country requires. But it depends also the resources and the maturity to embrace this data culture. But for instance, you talk about data products and monetizing the data. I think this is a good approach, because we start by understanding what the business needs. And later we identify the data products that we have to build in order to solve these business challenges. And later we monetize these data products by we are not selling them outside, but we monetize them or reuse them across the company and accelerate the implementation of this data culture by promoting reusability across the organization.
And that makes monetization definitely a cultural aspect, right? And certainly an important key element of more mature data behaviors, we would say. You make an interesting point, by the way. You're saying, well, you know, the maturity, particularly also the cultural, let's say, embedding of data in the business can differ per region, right?
Yes.
So that's interesting, because a complex global company like Bupa would have to take that into account as well. Certain countries might be much more aware already and also more mature in their foundations than others, right? So there's not just one little 2x2 matrix you could make for Bupa, if I understand you well.
No, I mean, it's quite challenging sometimes. So it's about first understanding the situation on its country and its company. Later, I mean, we have a global data strategy, but we have to land this global data strategy in its location, okay? So, and I always start by understanding what these countries needs and what is the main business challenges. And later we start, okay, by identifying the initiatives that we have to put into, or the initiatives that we have to run during the following term or year or whatever, okay? And some of these initiatives are running globally and others are running locally, but we organize them in like 3 different aspects that you already mentioned some of them. And the first is about data culture and data literacy, okay, which is about skilling our people up. So we have to make sure that people is well trained in data, and in order to do that, we have to differentiate the users that we have. Okay, it's not that the data scientists don't need the same training than a business analyst, and the roles are very different across the organization. You also talk about the data foundation, which for me is very, very, very important. I know that sometimes talking about managing the data and cleaning the data is not very, very sexy, but I think it's key. Okay, we want, for instance, to provide more trusted data to our consumers, to our users. Okay, and also we have to comply with rules and regulations. Okay, so we work in a very regulated environment, okay? And we manage very sensitive data. We are talking about the health of our customers, and we manage the data of the health of our customers, okay? So data management and data governance is key in our company, okay? And finally, the tools and technology. But for me, the tool and technology are enablers, okay? Are enablers of the management of the data, are enablers of the governance of the data, and are enablers of this data culture that we are implementing.
Exactly. Well, there's clearly a lot of benefits in becoming a data-powered enterprise, and we discussed stuff like productivity, efficiency, certainly also customer services, maybe monetization. By the way, in the report, there's also very simple, if nothing else, there's also clear financial benefits. So we found, for example, that Data Masters realized 42% higher net income growth than average of the 500 over the past 3 years. So you grow clearly much faster being a data master than all the others. And also a 39% higher net income margin. So both more profitable and more growing than others that are not data masters. So if nothing else, if everything else fails, I don't want to hear about customers or efficiency or productivity or this strange thing called monetization. Then still, I guess we have some very clear financial benefits, and which are very clearly outlined in the reports as well. Well, let's switch to Alberto, but stay a little bit with the Spanish accent, which I think sounds so much better than my harsh Dutch. No, it sounds so much better than my Dutch accent, which is absolutely horrible. I could listen to Spanish and French accents for hours. Trust me, so much better. So we're switching to Alberto. But before we do that, Alberto, tell us just a little bit more about Gaia-X as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ron, and thank you to the guys at Capgemini. Ron and I met less than a month ago.
Yes, we did.
A very interesting podcast that he produces with a team of wonderful people, and I really enjoyed it. So, so I, as you mentioned earlier, I was the chief data officer for the government of Spain. The first ever, really, because it was a kind of a new thing that they created 4 years ago. And so I finished that work roughly in April this past year, and since then I joined the ASBL, which, as you say, it's a non-profit association to do to build a standard related to a lot of the things we're talking today. And so I'm, I work for the CEO, and I'm on a group of people who are trying to push, in my case, trying to kind of bridge the gap between the technological standards and the compliance standards that we do, and really the use across private and public organizations in Europe, but also internationally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is a very interesting context, right? It's the EU, if you like, but mainly I would say the EU digital economy context, right? So there's a lot of data exchange there potentially between countries, maybe between industries, between private companies. There's all sorts of different opportunities, if nothing else, at the EU level to achieve that. And that sounds a lot like what many of us face on a daily basis, right? The challenge to become more data powered in a very challenging, diverse ecosystem type of context. So from your perspective, what you found out, maybe also at the Spanish government, by the way, but equally, of course, within Gaia-X, what are for you the pillars to actually become data powered? What are the success points there?
Yeah, I think you highlighted a really interesting point, and it's this idea of what can be done with data. Everyone talks about the new oil of the new century. The chairwoman of a very big Spanish bank has actually called it the new oxygen, because oxygen, obviously necessary for life, but if you have too high concentration of oxygen, it will kill you. So what I'm trying to say with this is that data is a very powerful thing, but unmanageable data or uncontextualized data can actually become more poisonous or more challenging than helpful, right? And so, managing data is not exactly a new thing. And in fact, there's many different companies and even products that are related to these, right? And we have an example, for example, with the framework of governments in Europe, with different member states, and the European Commission have been driven heavily the interoperability or the interconnection, between different, in this case, public sector applications. But really, these applications, in many, many ways, are really feeding from data underneath, and more so now, obviously, with learning and generative AI, at the level of these gigantic quantities of data for training these models, right? So once you understand that, the scope of data or the prevalence of what can be done with data is at a much higher level than it was maybe 10 years ago, you really need to start thinking even more pressingly about how you're governing data, how you're understanding data, and moreover, how you can contextualize it. And this is kind of, to me, one of probably the most significant pillar of being data-driven power, Before I joined the Spanish government, I worked for almost 5 years, sort of leading the data science applications of an electric company, And we had a lot of data, but it wasn't always easy to translate that data into actually meaningful applications, business applications. And the reason for that is typically in most organizations, you will have data collected from transactional purposes, so try to do what the company is good at. But when you try to kind of increase the level of these productivity gains or enabling data marketplaces or whatnot, you realize that suddenly the data you've collected is usually lacking context. That's really how OpenAI has driven a lot of the value of ChatGPT by really having a lot of context. And how do you solve the problem of context? Well, you either provided the context in a synthetic way, or and that's what it usually does with Gen AI, is you provide data, and that data underlying latently has context. And so how do you gain access to data or to data sources from different contexts? To me, the key is interoperability. And this is also something that's not exactly new. For example, the European Interoperability Framework, which is just a framework, but I've used it a lot when I was in the Spanish government, talks about 4 different levels or layers of interoperability. And they did this with the idea of public sector applications, but really can be translated into data. One is legal. How do we make sure that different organizations, when they're sharing data, but even different units within the same organization, operates under a legal framework, and the policies allow for that, And here there is different jurisdictions, different geographies, also compliance or even antitrust laws. Certain companies have different business units and they're not allowed to share data. So obviously that's a very strong legal requirement. At the next layer, you have organizational. This has got to do with the way organizations really define and execute their business processes, their responsibilities and expectations. And it's really about aligning or integrating business processes, relevant information is changed, but also a culture of the organization, which is a little bit of what.
Well, there we go. Yeah.
Which is it's really critical, And then semantically, right? This is probably easy to understand. You need to express the same thing by the same word, and you also need to use syntactically the same format so that computer systems can actually understand each other.
Context needs to be the same, right?
Exactly. And then technological, which arguably might actually be the easiest one to solve. This is literally about data integration, interconnection, protocol, secure communication. So to me, those 4 layers really explain how interoperability works. And that also applies to data exchange, which is a way to contextualize data and really drive this data value forward. And 2 elements there are trust in data exchange and standardizing, because if you don't have a way to really interconnect those layers, then you really are hindering your progress.
And that is an important message, right? And whether it's at the level of Spanish government, if I hear you right, or whether it's in the very complex situation of the EU, between so many different players with all different, also objectives in terms of sovereignty, all these different industries. And then you find that more of a platform approach in which you have some standards and some agreed, let's say, semantics and interoperability. Without that, you don't get anything to work. But if you have it, and if we look at the successes of Gaia X so far, it's definitely the platform philosophy that helps to get things going, right? And I think these lessons, whether they pertain to Spain or the EU or even to just one simple organization, can already be just as applicable, right? And that's the nice thing about it. So thanks for that. Let's switch a little bit to Jonathan. Jonathan, I sincerely hope you are fully awake, because it's still awfully early in the morning over there.
That's fine. And I can
Denver,
also
Colorado.
I can also add to greater confusion about accents. So I'm originally from Ireland.
Ireland.
Yes, but I've lived in the States 23 years, so my accent is now clearly from nowhere. So
it's clear adding value over here. That's for sure. It makes it all the more diverse, right?
Yep.
So you are. You are with 𝐻𝐚, and you're with you're VP for strategic customers. For those people that don't know, if you're in Capgemini, you probably know 𝐻𝐚 because we work a lot with them. But could you tell just in a few seconds a little bit more without the product pitch? Because of course today we're not doing product pitches.
Absolutely.
What exactly is 𝐻𝐚?
So 𝐻𝐚 is the leader in enterprise data catalogs. We were founded about just over 13 years ago. Coined the actual space, and we are now highly successful enterprise with 600 plus customers. I think what's most impressive about 𝐻𝐚 is the spread of verticals that we work across. And I think we do so across the globe, both within Europe, Asia Pac, and of course the United States. And my role there is to really kind of help many of our customers really truly understand and really extract the true value out of the data that they have. A little about me. I think it's really interesting to hear everyone's backgrounds. I'm a data guy too. Started my career at Sun Microsystems, working on the Java platform. I was the author and architect of the JDBC API. So I'm a data guy right to my core.
That is a claim to fame. That is a claim to fame.
Yes, it is. And I even wrote a book about it. Don't ever buy it. Worked at Salesforce and Progress Software and Cloudflare. But here at 𝐻𝐚, I work with all of our customers here to really kind of take them down the line of really bringing their data initiatives really to truly understand the struggles that they have around bringing data culture to life, and doing so across a huge spread of verticals.
And you do mention culture, right? From a, let's say, strategic customer perspective, we tend to look at 𝐻𝐚. It's a catalog tool, so it's technology, it's a platform. But actually, I hear you mention culture as one of the things to actually boost, right, in order to be successul. So how does that work from a product perspective?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's never only just about the tool. What the tool does in the catalog and all the services that we provide around governance and other kind of insights and analytics view of your data. It's about helping our customers down this journey of really truly realizing what it is to bring this program to life. So often we see, failed catalog, initiatives across the board often do not have the kind of resonance where there's the right level of data leadership in place, where you're taking an organization down a journey. I think it was very interesting to hear about Bupa as well. You talked about a federated model as well. We see the federated model occur an awful lot. It's so often the means by which you can empower an organization, empower a set of stewards to curate a set of data, such that you can move it closer towards that data marketplace and actually stand up a set of literacy such that organizations can truly democratize that data. And what is the outcome they're all working for? They're working to bring new value, to serve their customers in entirely new ways, to innovate, to build efficiencies. And I think, of course, with this AI world, that is only accelerating. I think we talked, Ron, a couple of days ago, 2-3 years ago. I think we were in a very, very different place than where we were today. Everybody's waking up to this new reality.
Absolutely. And you did mention, by the way, with Gen AI, and I hear you say the same thing in terms of, it sparked some entirely new interests, and more people are now interested in democratization of data, also in terms of bringing data closer to the business side. And then I believe that all the platform elements you mentioned, such as data marketplaces, catalogs, maybe supported by generative AI, can help to boost the data behavior side of the equation as well, right? Next to the technology side of things. So let's talk a little bit more about generative AI, people. Sometimes I try to avoid it because we sort of get the message, right? And if you listen to Gartner, if you want to, they would say, well, it's a little bit, past the peak of inflated expectation. Now it's going a little bit down. Obviously, Gartner would certainly sort of help to create that hype in the first place, but hey, that's the law of the market, and that's what we see. But whatever you think about generative AI, it certainly sparked a lot of interest in the boardroom and within companies, right? So let's go back to Monica. I think, and we've discussed before that there's clearly a rise of generative AI and interest for it also within Bupa. But what do you think are the specific dimensions of data critical to your specific sector? So healthcare and health insurance. What are the specific dimensions of data critical to be successful with generative AI?
Oof, good question. I mean, I think we are exploring it, right? And we are exploring very, very, very carefully. Okay. I mean, I quite surprised. I mean, I haven't seen any other technology before that has been adopted so quick and so rapidly as generative AI. I mean, it was discovered last year. And now,
2 years maybe.
Or 2 years ago, okay, and now it seems that everybody use generative AI, and everybody can apply data and do their own analytics when using this tool, which is great. Okay, so I think it's becoming an accelerator to push and across the company, and we are adopting it as well, of course. Okay, is that something you?
Who is it?
Yes, and I think that it can be very, very useful, but we have to be very careful as well. Okay, so as I said before, we are talking about the health of our customers. We are managing the health of our customers. And we cannot just leave one robot or whatever there to talk about our customer with our health. Okay, so we are starting to apply generative AI. We are doing some POCs and exploring the application of it. But now what we are doing is applying it to improve or to make some processes more efficient when managing, for instance, the agenda of the doctors or the doctor's appointment, or when a customer or a patient comes. We prefer call it them customer rather than patients. Okay, but when a customer comes to our clinics, so all the process that they have to follow into the clinics, so it can be supported by buying a generative AI technology, to a robot or whatever you want to call it. Okay, but I mean, we are trying to do it very, very careful, because we know also, and we have experience with the hallucinations of ChatGPT or any other tool. So applying when talking about the health of our customers is very, very dangerous, and we are it will be a big reputational damage for our company as well. So we have to be very careful with that.
Okay? So that's the balance act, right? That we're seeing in the reports as well. We see, compared to 4 years ago, so much more awareness and appetite, if you like, for data. And it's mainly driven, first of all, of course, what we experienced during the COVID crisis. And then afterwards, clearly Gen AI that came up so quickly. And made so many people also at the business level enthusiastic, and maybe even a little bit too much. And they become a little bit too much aware without understanding the foundations. And I think you said it at the very beginning as well, and it resonates from the reports quite a lot. If you actually want to go beyond the proof of concept level that many companies are still stuck in, I guess, you have to do the less sexy things, right? Generative AI, very sexy beast in the boardroom, big elephant, very sexy elephant. But having said that, privacy, security, ethics, guardrails, scale, but also simple things like compute cycles that could potentially cost a lot of money or be very unsustainable. I think what resonates from the report is what you're saying as well, right? We see the benefits over here, but we realize it's not 42. It's not the meaning of life. It's not the answer to everything. And it needs to be carefully managed in an enterprise context. But having said that, we should be, the way I see it, we should be thankful to have that elephant in the room acknowledged, because there's a healthy appetite, right, for data and AI. Of course, Alberto, talking about the EU a little bit more, obviously, some people do see both the benefits, but also the potential dangers of AI. Obviously, we now have the EU AI Act, which I'm pretty sure you would be aware of, because it would be quite influential in what we're doing in the EU theater, if you like, in the data theater. What kind of dimensions do you see in that role? We don't have too much time, but just in a minute or so, what's your What's your take on that?
Yeah, so obviously the European Commission and the Parliament and the Council have taken a very strong approach to this, right?
Yes.
And many people, it's controversial. Many people have opinions about the good or the bad of the AI Act. But the AI Act, the regulation of the AI, which actually was heavily driven by my boss at the time in Spain, we had the presidency of the Council. It's all about how the applications for AI are used. So it tries to regulate risk, right? And the reason for this is because a lot of this Gen AI is very black boxy, right? So it works, clearly it works. I mean, I keep getting amazed at the ability of these generative algorithms, but perhaps you ask a question one time, you ask a question a different time, and it responds differently.
Get the different answer.
So this idea can be also a little bit unnerving, and I think the idea of having a transparent view, understanding that these algorithms rely on data, having a transparent view of the value chain of data, of the transformation chain of data, is very, very useful. And this, I think, at least for the next few years, will be kind of the key element around the compliance of these complex digital systems, right?
Precisely.
With AI, obviously, you need large quantities of data and you need a lot of computing, and so going back to my first question earlier, a lot of this to me brings a memory of how you are able to access data in a curated fashion. So it kind of reminds me of a little bit of this data mesh paradigm, which obviously now is quite understanding. But instead of just thinking of the data mesh, maybe as a data or AI resource mesh, in the sense of, well, data is necessary, but I also need the ability to compute on this data. And so, who has the resource of what I want to use? And moreover, what are the semantics? What are the, rights for using these resources? Because obviously there's a lot of economical power and also financial stake in the game. And so that's a lot of what personally we do from Gaia-X, is trying to kind of build a common standard for providing a certain element of the transparency in the value chain.
So these standards can help a lot, right? In these reference frameworks can help a lot in sort of complying to parts of the AI Act, I guess, the EU AI Act. And by the way, this pertains to the EU, but obviously we'll see very similar things happening in Asia Pacific, in the US, anywhere else in the world for sure. Although I do think EU is sort of front runner this time, I guess, in this. And the way I feel about it is often with rules and regulations on one hand, and again, it's a balance act. It's tempting to say, well, it's stopping innovation and nothing is possible anymore. But if you turn it around a little bit and you see it as an enabler, what you're suggesting as well, Alberto, see it as an enabler in order to successfully thrive on data and be able to collaborate on data, but also on AI models, and be ensured that the right results that are actually stuff that you can have confidence in, AI that you can have confidence in, then I think that's a big plus as well. But we will need to balance it, because it's sometimes also very tempting to say, well, rules and regulations stop us, or if you are actually, enforcing that, you might be tempted to say, well, it's 0 or 1, but I actually believe it's much more a balance act. Well, what do you know? The time flies when you're having fun, and before you know it, it's 1:45, at least where I am, and in India it might be 1:15. But anyway, it is 1:45, and that means that we want to dedicate some time to questions as well, because we have such an esteemed team of panel members over here. It would be a waste just to have some Q&A going on here between the four of us, and we got some very interesting ones. I have one maybe for you, Jonathan, which I think is another almost meaning of life type of question. It says, well, do you feel a company can move directly from being a data laggard to a data master without first passing through either being data aware and or data enabled? Would you be able to make that, you have no Michelin star, suddenly you have 2 or 3, right? Would that even be possible? Have you ever seen companies that do it?
Yeah, so it's a great point. Look, I think the net for everybody out there is that the need for trusted data to support AI has never been higher. I mean, I think there's lots of talk, lots of views that there are significant economic opportunities behind this. So for those companies who are looking hungrily at these opportunities, they need to understand that, there might be a moment to walk slow before you go fast. So data is the foundation for all these models, and you don't wish to take on a degree of risk because the quality of the data that informs these models will have a downstream effect. So I think, it's really a kind of a set of combinations here in terms of, what it is to position an organization for AI readiness. It's around building those 4 pillars of data culture that at least I talk to many of my customers about, many of our partners about. And it's around, whether we are, talking with the likes of, Snowflake or Databricks or Salesforce Data Cloud. Each of them are coming to us to say, okay, we have a set of customers who are trying to stand up these net new innovations around an agent force or whatever else.
Yeah.
Each of them say, we need to be able to have a point whereby we can have faster search and discovery. For what you find in search and discovery, you actually are looking at a trusted set of data that is, party to a set of data governance that is, trustworthy, but also kind of is fitting the kind of data literacy marks that people want to hear about. And data literacy, I think, also often has a some bit of a bad name in the industry, but I think that's a little unfair. It's about providing the right context and concepts and taxonomy of that data in a way that allows people to truly understand the provenance of the data that they are seeing. Then ultimately, it culminates in a set of leadership. What is the change management you're going to drive forward on your organization here, such that you can realize very measurable return on investments of this? And I think that's the real kind of crux here. You talked about the hype curve earlier on. I think many organizations are looking at the kind of spend that they are applying to these technologies and asking rightly the questions of when are we going to see measurable customer outcomes here? And I think that is really what's going to drive the real clarity here moving forward.
And it sounds a little bit more like boosting, maybe first boosting a little bit on the behavior side, and then do the foundation as well, right? Because that's still the question, of course. I think it's a big transformational question. Could you increase your quality in both directions at the same time, or do you it in smaller steps? I think it very much depends on the type of organizations as well. But it's very clear what you're currently seeing there, and I find it still very interesting from a technology point of view, a platform point of view, and you see so much, let's say, behavioral aspects kicking in. We have another question, Alberto. I think you find this interesting. We haven't talked too much about sustainability, but obviously a lot of companies that want to collaborate on data or exchange AI models would also do it for sustainability purposes, right? Across entire supply chains in an industry, for example. How do you get that going? Have you seen successes already from a perspective of Gaia-X in getting these sustainability data collaboration networks starting to move?
You mean from the perspective of sustainability?
Yeah, sustainability, data reporting, collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, indeed. I mean, Gaia now is an initiative that was kind of kickstarted politically in 2019, at the end of 2019. Heavily driven by the French and German ministries. Interesting. So not so much the digitalization part, but the economics part. And they provided some seed funding for some of the key I don't know how to call it, initiatives or projects. They're not really a project. They're more of a initiative for creating a network of data collabs within particular realms like automotive or tourism or mobility, for example. I think from a technological and a deployment perspective, I think there's been definitely quite interesting learnings, and some of these initiatives are operationally running. I think perhaps the most difficult part, and it's work that's still being sort of fleshed out, and a lot of this has to do with the valuation of data and how do you actually value raw data, right? A lot of these data spaces that I'm referring to are kind of a middleman instrument in providing infrastructure, not in the hardware sense, but in the AI assets or data resources kind of sense for building particular applications. And while maybe it's a lot easier to evaluate the value of a given application within a given business process. What's the value you put on the work of a chief data officer or on a data
Right.
infrastructure? And I think that's a topic that we're still working on to understand, because without understanding the sustainability of the instrument, of the infrastructure, so to speak, it would be much harder to justify investments that then lead
Fair enough.
to evaluation of the use case.
And that is what you could call a balance act, right? Because on one hand, maybe after COVID and Gen AI, we realized that sustainability is another awareness driver to up the behaviors of a company, because you need data in order to show your sustainability activity and success. And on the other hand, the tool itself, the technology underneath, might be not so as sustainable as we would wish for. So hey, that's another very interesting balance act that we're facing. I have a final question for Monica as well, because we're approaching the end of our little rendezvous today. We have a very interesting question from the audience. I think that many people would ask themselves, also in a Gen AI perspective, but in general, what strategies, Monica, can organizations implement to ensure their data solutions are scalable as their needs evolve?
I don't think that there is a. I would like to have a recipe for it. Okay.
No recipe. That's
there
such
is
a pity.
not there is not recipe. I think that everyone should find its own strategy. Okay, but I think that it's important to measure the progress and the evolution. This is not something that we can get just. In one shot. This is not something that we go, okay, we are going to be a data master company, or we want to be a data power company, and we'll do it in just 1, 2, 3 years. Okay, this is a journey. Okay, and first, I would start by thinking what being a data power company means for my company. Okay, it's not the same. It depends on your sector. It depends what's the situation in your market. It depends of your resources as well, because you have to invest a lot. Okay, and after that, in order to think and to know that you are progressing on this journey, because sometimes it can be quite tough to it. Okay, so it seems that we are not progressing a lot. It's important to measure the progress. Okay, so that's what we are doing in Bupa, for instance. I'm sure that most of your companies do as well. Is we run some data capabilities assessment to understand how we are progressing and how we are moving in, and how well we are, how much we are improving our data foundations, our data culture. Okay, it's important to make sure that we can measure the progress in the different activities and initiatives that we put in place when evolving our data culture. Okay, and also I think it's very important to have fun as well. Okay, so this is not something that we have. For instance, and I'm quite proud to say that these days in Bupa, we are running a hackathon. Okay, it's a global hackathon where people from all the countries where we are working and we are running business, we work together. We're organizing several squads across the world and across the different time zones, and these squads had to meet a challenge, has to to explain and to think how they are going to create some innovative assets for this company based in data and based in generative AI, of course, which is the topic of this year. Okay, so there is not a recipe. Okay,
There's not a recipe.
We have to work in our data foundations, but we have to work in our data culture as well. Okay, and data culture is about running hackathons, for instance, or running some data summits. We also run one data summit every year. Okay, so to bring all the company engaged and to bring everybody involved when talking about data. Okay,
definitely. By the way, I was lost for a minute, but I was glad you were talking, Monica, and kept on talking. Maybe nobody noticed, but I have now a slower connection, by the way. So I hope I'm still well audible. I think we can safely conclude now that the road towards data mastery, which is an important one, and we all saw the benefits and discussed it today, is one big balance act, right? Or maybe we should even call it a pendulum swing, and hold that thought, by the way. I'm still particularly struck by the way that a new sense of awareness has been created, and it's not only Gen AI, it was also COVID, and now it's sustainability and others, and maybe just financial benefits as well. But that new focus on behaviors and then tend to forget the foundations, that really is a new one. So we have to end this, but of course I wouldn't do it without asking each and every of you, just in one sentence, if you have one last recommendation of what people could do once this LinkedIn Live event sadly is over. But what should they be doing tomorrow as a first act to on their road towards data mastery? What would you say, Alberto? Just one sentence.
Yes. So I think data mastery is about trying things and not breaking too many on the way, or at least keeping track of what you're breaking and what has worked and not worked. My learning from data is that it's a science as much as it's an art.
All good. Jonathan?
Sure. I think last comment would be measure everything, right? I think going very intentionally with an OKR type approach. What are your key measures? What are the outcomes you're working for? And be very concrete upon that. I think that will guide you forward, moving forward.
Excellent. Know where you are. And finally, Monica, one last sentence.
I would say have a clear vision. Okay, define your roadmap, and enjoy and have fun.
Excellent. So thank you so much for this highly engaging discussion, I would say. Monica, Alberto, Jonathan, reflecting on the findings of the Data-Powered Enterprises reports, but also sharing, I would say, some of your very personal experience in your journey towards data mastery. We all have to go to our own journey, I guess, for that. If you, for the audience, if you haven't downloaded the report yet, hey, it's all free for you to have, and you don't need to sell your soul or register any other personal data to obtain it. It's there. You will find in the comments, I'm pretty sure you'll find the links over there. Also, you don't want to miss our latest news on our insights and data, our Capgemini Data and AI LinkedIn page. I'm pretty sure you'll find that link as well for relevant news. And of course, there will be a next Data Masters Rendezvous sessions. So you'll learn it first when you follow that. And then, of course, did I already mention our Data-Powered Innovation Jam podcast? Maybe. I would certainly recommend it to you. You will find a link in the comments. And in a few weeks, as a matter of fact, as Alberto already said, we will publish a podcast with our guest Alberto. And that's definitely one to look out for. We'll dive much deeper into the topic, but we'll also discuss a lot about groovy music, if that makes sense to you. Well, that concludes our Data Master Rendezvous session of today. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, there's always new levels of data mastery to achieve. Take care, enjoy the power, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.